This is William Stafford's The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. So some 40 days ago, we began the catechumenate with that poem, and it feels like the right bookend now at the end of Lent to hear from William Stafford again and this thread. I think it's Kierkegaard who said that life is lived forward but understood backwards. If you have ever had the opportunity to do work in which you find joy and meaning, and I hope all of you have had the opportunity at one time or another, maybe even right now, to do work in which you find joy and meaning, you may have had the sense of looking back and saying, gosh, I've been getting ready to do this work for a long time. I've been getting ready to do this work my whole life. Now, sometimes you knew you were getting ready as you did it. There are people who have very, very clear senses of call, and they've known since they were tiny that they were called to be parents or teachers or work in healthcare or some other helping profession. And throughout their lives, therefore, they were looking to build skills that would help them do this thing that they were called to. There's some folks who have that kind of clarity. But most of us, I'll speak for myself, for me, I didn't have that kind of clarity. And I was getting ready anyway for the things to which God has called me. There's a thread that you follow, and it's looking back that you come to understand. I think, and church is a good place to talk about this, I think about my vocation as a Christian. If you had told me as a child or a young adult that I would someday end up as a Christian, that I would someday end up going to church, I would have been surprised and appalled and possibly even offended. This is news that I would not have welcomed receiving from the ghost of Christmas future. Church was so clearly to me this place of anti-intellectualism, this place full of judgment and small-mindedness, this place full of people who were variously obsessed with and terrified of sex. Why would I want anything to do with that? And yet, as I was growing up, I was doing all of these things that were getting me ready. I was reading C.S. Lewis and Agatha Christie with no idea that I was learning the rhythms of Anglicanism from them and deeply Christian ideas. Later on, I got heavy into drama. I don't mean intersocial fights. I mean, I was in theater, and I started learning about cooperating with other people and telling stories together and discovering holiness, although I would not have used that word, in beauty, in the crafting of symbols. I was in a high school theater company with maybe 25 other young people. Two of us now are Anglican priests. we were getting ready, apparently. Later on, I became the business agent of a trade union and was working towards justice and engaging in conflict resolution, all of these things that make up church. There's a thread that you follow. It's hard to know where the understanding is. Even when you're looking back, sometimes it is hard to understand where the thread might have been, what is the thread and what isn't. Human beings are really good at seeing connections where they don't exist. To choose, I think this is a fairly famous example. If I sneeze and then there is a thunderstrike, I probably didn't cause the thunderstrike by sneezing, although it sort of seems like there might be a connection. There's a wonderful website you can find called Spurious Correlations. Has anyone been to this website? Oh, it is endless fun. So Spurious Correlation is just this dude who's found things that correlate and dropped them on top of each other as graphs. So he has proven, for instance, that the amount of GMO corn produced in Minnesota in a given year correlates with global pirate attacks. He has demonstrated, I'm trying to remember what another example was. That is one that pops in there. He's demonstrated that people who die by drowning in swimming pools correlates with the number of movies made by Nicolas Cage that year. So, stop it, Nick. You're hurting people. There are all of these correlations that look like they line up, but they are not real. They're coincidences. And similarly, human beings are really good at discounting evidence that doesn't dovetail into how we understand reality. You will very rarely hear someone say the referees are biased. They always make unfair calls in favor of our team. You will rarely hear someone in church say, people are saying they don't like the new music, but I love it. I think it's Daniel Kahneman, who Paul introduced me to, who said you will rarely hear someone say, looking at a marriage, I knew the marriage wouldn't last, but it did. So part of our work as church is helping to discern what is a real connection, what is a real understanding, what is actually the thread that is running through our lives, and what is something that we might mistake for it. This day, the Easter Vigil is all about trying to discern the thread you follow. It's all about trying to understand. So it's early in the morning, the sun has just risen, and the women are coming to Jesus' tomb, and they are carrying these jars filled with their grief. They're planning to go to the tomb and anoint Jesus, anoint his body, so that it might journey back home, back to the one whom he called the Father. And as they walk in the cold of the morning, in addition to their sadness, in addition to their exhaustion, in addition to their deep overwhelm, they have this logistical question, which is, how are we going to get into the tomb? So Jesus is not buried in a modern grave where if you got out shovels, you could dig up the coffin. His body has been placed by Nicodemus into a tomb that is carved out of the rock. And then the ancient morticians, I guess, the ancient people who are in charge of this, have rolled this giant, kind of this massive wheel, for lack of a better way of putting it, over the entrance to the tomb, thus sealing it up. And there's a real question for the women. Are they going to have enough strength to move the stone and get into the tomb and anoint Jesus's body? But when they get to the tomb, they find that the stone has already been rolled away. And they go inside, and there Jesus' body is gone. Inside there is a young man dressed in white as though preparing for baptism. And he says, "Don't be alarmed." Now, this is advice that they are not able to take. This is a bit like looking out the window of the airplane and seeing there's fire coming out of the engine, and the pilot comes over the loudspeaker and says, "Remain calm." There is already adrenaline just powering through their veins. And the young man says, "You're looking for Jesus. He's not here. He's been raised. Go and tell." And they do go. They go tell. The women proclaim the gospel. And through their proclamation and through their encounters with the risen Jesus, they begin to understand. They begin to understand everything that has happened up until now in a new way. They had lived forward, and they are now understanding backwards. They are now seeing the thread that ran through all of their encounters with Jesus, all of the things that he said and did. But more than that, they begin to see this thread extending back throughout all of history, extending back to the Exodus and to that time when God breathed new life into the bones, extending back into the flood, extending back to the very beginning when the Spirit hovered over the earth. The thread goes back all that way. And so on this day, the church creates the service, the Easter Vigil, where we tell all the stories again. We tell all of the stories again in light of resurrection. Phoebe has a cup that says on the side, "Do all the things." And that is what we do at the Easter Vigil. We do all the things and hear them anew. I hope this is not a glib analogy, but the resurrection is like the twist ending at the end of a film, and suddenly the entire film is different. You need to go watch it again, and you understand the scenes in this whole new way based on what happened just before the credits roll. There's a thread you follow. Here's the good news. If the church is right, if there is indeed a thread that ran through creation, that ran through Jesus' life, that ran all the way to the empty tomb, if there's a thread that ran even through the cross, a place where it looked like there was no thread at all, where Jesus himself could not even see the thread. Jesus on the cross, we heard this yesterday, said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where is the thread that I was promised?" If the thread runs through creation and even runs through the cross, then that suggests that the thread is running through our lives still, right now. We can't always see it. We cannot always explain it. Sometimes it is only at the end, when we are looking back after we are done living forward, that we understand it. But the promise of the empty tomb is that we will understand. You don't let go of the thread. When you hold on to it, you cannot get lost. Alleluia. Christ is risen.